Hi, welcome everyone. Happy to see here familiar people and also new people. And welcome to our second webinar in our Are You Ready for the Circular Future webinar series. A bit about MIXI. So we are located in Helsinki, and we are focused on circular innovation. And the reason that we exist is because we can't, we and you, of course, can't change the linear system alone. So I'm Alissa Mick, I'm the founder of MIXI, and here is also Rika Olli joining me, who is my partner in MIXI, and she is located in London. And as I mentioned, we collaborate with different companies, early stage companies, and also corporates, investors, to promote circular innovation. And that's also the reason we started this webinar series about different topics related to the circular economy, because we believe that we all know that we need to be more circular from different reasons, but there is a lot of things that are still very challenging to understand. And with this series, we would like to bring these topics to you, to the participants, and we keep them as very open to any discussions. We have in each one of the webinars, we have one topic that we focus on. And today we have the topic of the future of consumption. And we're going to dive into how consumption would look like in the future. And we couldn't think about a better speaker than Katia Dayan Vladimirova, who is a researcher and also a founder. And I'm inviting you to ask any questions. You can add them to the chat, and then we'll try to maybe answer them during the webinar. And I'm also sure that we won't have the time, so welcome to send them to me or to Katia, and to kind of follow up the discussion. So now I'll stop sharing and I'll welcome again Katia. And please introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you so much, Mika, for inviting me, and Rika. It's really lovely to be part of this conversation. So I am based in Geneva. I am a researcher. This used to be my day job for the past 15 years. And I've been working at the University of Geneva on topics related to sustainable fashion consumption in the past 5 to 7 years. I'm also a founder of the International Research Network on Sustainable Fashion Consumption, community of over 100 researchers working on these topics, which is more on the academic side. Now, I specialize in topics of minimalism, sufficiency, and reduced consumption, but also kind of systemic changes that are required for the global fashion system to operate within the planetary boundaries. As an academic scientific expert, I worked with some international institutions like the European Commission, European Parliament, with the upcoming regulations and adopted strategy on the EU circular and sustainable textiles. So I do some policy advising. I also work with brands which are seeking some ways that everybody's confused these days, obviously, with the upcoming regulations. And another chapeau, another hat that I wear is the hat of a founder. I have just launched a brand of sustainable underwear for the whole family, which is called Well Rounded. Oh, and for my research, I found a while ago that just publishing in academic peer-reviewed journals is not reaching the audience I want. So I started a Substack. It's like a blog of essays called Post-Growth Fashion. So that's where I write about some of the research findings that I have. voila.
Amazing. Quite a journey you have, Katia. And maybe I'll start with kind of a question which I like really to ask founders. Do you remember the moment you kind of had this idea, okay, that something is not working in this world from the consumption aspect, and I would like to change it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. So I am a founder out of necessity. I'm a founder out of frustration. I wish someone else did that, but nobody was doing it. So I had to. I felt that I felt compelled to do it. All of my research that I've been doing on fashion and sustainability was telling me that there is a lot of excess, there's a lot of unnecessary production, and there's a lot of really bad production practices in place. But there's one specific aspect that was driving me nuts, which is about toxicity and toxic chemicals that are used in fashion for dyes, for softeners, for color fasteners, and so on and so forth. And I was searching a few years ago for some underwear for my son who went through a growth spurt. And I was like, okay, I need to get him a new, pack of underwear. And I all I wanted was to get him underwear that's certified that it doesn't have, toxic chemicals. And it has proven to be an almost impossible challenge. I searched and I searched and I couldn't find one that would, reassure me as a mom that definitely there's no bad chemicals. And because I know about these chemicals through specific articles that publish about this, I'm really concerned about it. I'm really worried, and I'm thinking that right now we're living through the phase of being like guinea pigs for something that will become a big reveal, like what happened with tobacco and cancer in the past. I think we're now just before a scandal like that, when unfortunately the health effects of toxic chemicals are going to start coming out. Hormone disruptors, fertility rates dropping, cancers, and so on. So I couldn't find one. And then I had this moment like, okay, then I have to create one. I have to create one for my kid. And I started initially with this idea for children. But then lots of my friends were like, what about us? And I said, you have a point. What about me?
Yeah, why should we use toxic underwear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so it then expanded to a very basic first line that we launched is just one model, very simple, nothing out of nothing too fashionable, too crazy. It's just the most basic, simple underwear in models that everybody generally likes to wear for men, women, boys, and girls. So yeah, but I do remember that moment. It came in November 2021 when I had this like, okay, something has to move. There is clearly a niche, and I know I'm not the only one as a consumer, from a consumer point of view, who seeks this kind of products. And what I also dislike as a consumer and as a researcher, I have this added layer of complexity. I don't take nonsense from brands, and we've been seeing a lot of greenwashing happening. Sometimes it's just by ignorance. Brands just actually genuinely don't know, despite having to do their due diligence. Sometimes there could be some malice hidden in that, and behind the greenwashing. Sometimes they're trying to cover up and improve their image or PR. But I get really frustrated as a consumer when I see something that says, hey, we're 100% circular, or hey, we're 100% sustainable. And then, you read slightly more into it. There's not even fine print, and you realize that it's nonsense. And so my idea was to respond to this, with like, what if we actually make a product that is all that and more? Is it even possible? So I took it as a challenge to try to see, is it even possible to create a fully European value chain for my product, to create it based on circular design principles and so on. So for the first, 2 years that I've been developing it, especially the first, year, there was this whole experimentation going on around circularity principles, local value chain, and so on and so forth. So I was really happy. We went through multiple rounds of testing, but I could talk about this for a very long time. Sorry. That moment happened.
I think it's important. While you were speaking kind of about of course, your wish to face the negative aspects of the existing products that we have. So I was thinking, what do you think is the right balance when you talk with consumers between, okay, the kind of the scary things, like where are we going? And as you mentioned, the kind of the negative effects, and then kind of the positive ones, which of course are also there. So how do you approach your audience?
So I think because I can see things, I've been giving advice to like international NGOs and then policy institutions in terms of like what SMEs should be doing. And then I became an SME and I was like, oh, okay, I see. Humility.
You went to the other side. Yeah.
From the point of view of small brands and big, I think the first and foremost thing to do before we speak about communication, way before we speak about communication, is getting your house in order. And for that, unfortunately, many decisions are made because that's how it's done in the industry, and not because that's how we specifically chose it. So my experience with Well-Rounded is that if a brand, even if the brand has the best aspirations and motivations, it may end up doing things wrongly simply because that's how the industry is set up and the brand doesn't have the knowledge to double check. I will give you an example. When I was searching for a factory partner in Portugal to produce underwear, I was introduced to this intermediary factory that came highly recommended by a designer from London. She said, oh, among the different intermediaries that take your orders and produce them for you in Portugal, this is like the most, sustainability minded intermediary. So I came with high hopes and I arrived in this warehouse near Porto where there's like hundreds of factories. And I come with a very specific description of what it is that I want. I'm saying I want to create 100% sustainable and circular line of underwear, which is not toxic for children and adults, of underwear, which would be 100% cotton, and preferably cotton that comes from Europe. Back then, I didn't have a partner in Greece yet. Then I built that partnership as well. And the guy tells me, the sales manager tells me, say no more. We have the most sustainable fabric for you. I was like, okay. So he brings me to the row of hanging samples, fabric samples. And he's like, touch this. And I'm trying to look at the fabric and description. And he's like, no, you touch this and you tell me how it feels. And I'm touching something which feels kind of, it's soft, but I kind of think I recognize synthetics because I've been separating in my own wardrobe synthetics for a while and I phased them all out.
You felt the polyester.
And I was like, yeah, what is it? So he's like, this is the most sustainable fabric that you can find for your underwear. This is recycled polyester. I was like, what? And like, I wouldn't want this anywhere near my child or anyone's child's butt, to be honest, because it's like, there's so many questions to repet, and that's not even recycled polyester into polyester. It's recycled plastic bottles, and we don't know about the health impacts of this. Like, and I was like, but I told you I wanted cotton. He's like, oh, but cotton is not gonna work. Well, a year
so
ahead.
It's a process.
Cotton totally works. So you need to ask for. Another good example was when I asked to put zero chemicals in general, zero treatments in our fabric with a factory that was very nice in Portugal that works with me. So I told them I would like Ecotex 100 class 1, which is usually reserved for babies. And this is like the highest standard that exists in terms of Ecotex. That means there are literally like the limits are the highest, like there's no chemicals that are possible. And I said, I would like this for children and adults. And they're like, why would you like this for adults? It's more expensive, which is weird, right? It's more expensive not to put chemicals than to put chemicals, but it's a side note. So I convinced them, I'm like, no, that is what I want. I assure you that's what I want. Just make it happen. And then the production manager, I arrived to the factory to see how, to see the samples, and they were just fresh out of the, confectionery, and he's bringing them to me, Javier, and my manager, she's like, oh, Javier is very surprised. I'm like, why is he surprised? And the guy's like, gray hair, like a lion's hair, like he's been working on this for 40 years. And he says, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I have never seen that if we don't put a softener, that the fabric comes out so soft. Like, it's really amazing. We didn't put any chemicals, and it's so soft and so nice, and it feels so good. I'm like, yeah, but why didn't you ever do this before?
Right. Yeah.
And you know what he answered?
Nobody asked.
He said, because nobody asked us to.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that shocked me. That shocked me to the core. I'm like, what? That means that all the other brands, and they work with many brands,
Mm-hmm.
are just taking things
As they are. Yeah.
I don't know who takes decisions. Probably in bigger companies, yeah, there's so many links in the chain that you are losing sight, of what's happening. So for a brand, before doing any communication, you need to figure out how your process looks like. You need to assess the risks. You need to understand where you can do better, and do better.
Yeah.
It's not that communication can help improve your image if your processes are rotten. You have to fix your processes first. You have to really make an effort, and this is definitely going to affect the bottom line, unless these are the values that were at the core from the very beginning. So, decent pay, great materials, and so on. So if it's something that's coming as an added bonus, it's gonna mess up the traditional linear system, obviously.
Yeah. And now a question about the challenges, because you've been now speaking about the suppliers. Of course, you've been working also with the kind of the policymakers. You have researched consumption habits. So what is the kind of the biggest challenge in creating better consumption habits?
Oh, there are definitely many. I think one of the most surprising, unexpected things that happened were Shein and Temu, the big Chinese ultra-fast fashion giants that just swept over e-commerce and fashion consumers, creating patterns of consumption that didn't exist even 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. Like this dirt cheap garments made out of synthetic fibers that are actually driving up oil demand in China more so than aviation fuel in the past 5 years. So it's kind of plastic fashion. So this we didn't expect, and it became a major challenge, especially among Gen Z and millennials, people who shop for these brands today. But I also see that there is a lot of positive kind of counter movement happening. There's a lot of people who overconsume, but there's also a lot of mindfulness that is emerging around how we consume. The biggest challenge is our closet size. At some point, everybody is bound to face the limited size of their dressing, of their closet. And what's happening right now, we buy a lot, but we also kind of donate a lot of things. Now there's new regulation happening on the EPR, extended producer responsibility, which is going to make brands responsible for the end of life of their garments. And what's happening today will not happen. So the output of the wardrobe system will be blocked. We won't be able to donate things as much because none of this is actually helping. Very little of this is actually helping people in need. Much of this just joins the very opaque downstream secondhand markets for textiles. And who benefits is a very big question. I mean, we know who benefits. There's a few very large companies that are doing those resale, but at the same time, it's not benefiting the poor as we think when we're donating garments. So once this output of the wardrobe is blocked, people will be bound to think about, like, okay, how much stuff can I possibly store? How much stuff makes me happy? And research, including my own, shows that people who own less, who choose to live with fewer clothes, are actually reporting high levels of subjective well-being. So people who live with less but choose higher quality, better products, but the ones that fit them, that are, they can last a lifetime, they're actually happier. So I think that common sense will be prevailing. Eventually, it's a frenzy. I understand. It's like a drug, you know, people are on this drug of cheap prices and a lot of
stuff.
novelty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and social media grasp, of course, but it's I believe it's going to pass and it's going to slow down for sure.
So will it pass thanks to regulation mainly, or how do you see it?
I think both. Regulation is the backbone. Without regulation, we can't see direction. It's really important that there are rules, and regulating any industry, let alone such a complex industry as textiles and fashion, takes a while. And we need to remember that the EU strategy for sustainable textiles has only been adopted, 2 years ago? Not even, like, yeah, last year they adopted amendments, and 2 years ago. So it's very fresh if we look in terms of how quickly are things going to change. Not even all regulations have been developed based on that strategy. And the EU is the innovator among all the different countries. There's the New York Fashion Act, of course, that's kind of picking up speed, but it's still in the works, you know. So the EU is really a pioneer in this sense, but it will take time. But at the same time, we see this from the consumer mentality change as well. It's a really bizarre, paradoxical situation in which people who overconsume are also, in terms of age groups, are also the age groups that are most concerned about the environment. So people are living through cognitive dissonance. People are living through this situation in which they cannot reconcile their values with their actual behaviors. And I don't blame them, because frankly, with the research that's been going around, going about, use of dark patterns, really kind of psychological manipulation that is happening on social media, commerce accounts like Shein, the dark patterns that constantly remind you to buy. I mean, you have to be an extremely resilient person, which, considering everything else that's going on in the world, is really difficult, right? To withstand this kind of marketing. It's just unfair. It should be outlawed, and I hope it will be, especially for adolescents, for example. But yeah, it's this age group that is having a hard time realizing that older generations are leaving them a planet with a changing climate, and life is going to be tough for them and their children. But at the same time, many are using fashion purchases as a way to numb the pain. So it's an easy, before you could buy a book or a cup of coffee, for this amount, and now you can buy a t-shirt, or you can buy yourself a new pair of shoes or something, or like a new bag. And this is a way to numb the pain and to kind of get distracted. I heard this from multiple people, also throughout my research. I've been seeing these accounts of younger consumers who are saying, like, I do this because I don't want to deal with other stuff that is happening in the world.
It's kind of escapism.
Exactly, yeah. So escaping in those images online. But as I said, the limited clothing space and realization that fashion does have a detrimental effect on mental health. Sorry, not fashion, social media. Social media and social media commerce has detrimental effects on mental health of people. It leads to depression. It leads to low self-esteem, especially among the younger generations who haven't yet, those who are bombarded with this. They're seeking affirmation, but instead of going towards their role models who are in person next to them, like their parents or people they love and respect around them, who can give them positive affirmation back to kind of help establish their identities, they're going with this on this quest to social media, where people are much more mean than they are in real life. They can be, because it's so, it's anonymous. So these effects are being seen now. They're being traced for Gen Z, especially. And I think within the next 5 years, we will see an exodus from social media overall. Not complete, but at least not the crazy uncharted territory as it used to be, like buy through influencers, through like accounts of social media commerce.
Yeah, well, these are good news, kind of optimistic forecast.
Yes, I am.
If we think about the future, so if you kind of, when you envision the way that we consume in the future, maybe underwear, or maybe we can take your son as an example. So how do you think would be his kind of world of consumption of fashion in the future?
Oh, thank you for asking this question. We do talk a lot about this with Max, my kid. So he's 8 years old, and he isn't aware that H&M exists or like that. For him, clothes is bought on Vinted. Vinted is an app to buy secondhand peer-to-peer. So when he needs new stuff, which is like right now, he's grown and he needs, 2 sizes up. He's like, Mama, we really need to check Vinted, I'm like, oh, really? What do you need? He's like, I need t-shirts and I'm going to need like several shorts. So for him, a priori, he goes to a secondhand option. He's totally cool with it. He has, I think because that's how I've been buying for him. And he can choose himself as well. So we go there together. He's able to choose. So I'm hoping. Also been taking him to, secondhand shops to show that but I don't take him to new shops. And if we're speaking about, well, he's only 8, but there is a growing group of people who, younger people who want to experiment and they want to be more sustainable. In Geneva, we see this very clearly. There's definitely a big subgroup of people who overconsume, adolescents who overconsume. There's also this growing kind of alternative counter movement of people who, on purpose, who explicitly choose to dress only secondhand. And in my opinion, this is just going to expand because the market of secondhand is also growing. There's no, because fashion production has been growing, all of this is going to secondhand almost right away. So it will be more beneficial for people, less costly for people to shop secondhand quite soon. It already is, and it's just a matter of time until people shift to have this, 50-50 in their wardrobes.
Yeah.
I see Rika has.
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to kind of maybe stay on that one. You expanded this now, but maybe we can stay on this topic a little bit from the parents and adults and kind of this transformation towards more conscious consumerism, because I guess that was something that caught my eye some time ago, that the average Shein customer is actually a 35-year-old with an average of 50K turnover. So you're clearly someone who would have the money to also spend it somewhere else. So at least for me, that was like a kind of a thing in the heart to say, I think, somewhere, well, I mean, we have failed, but like, what can we do to kind of, this was where you were going to actually there when you were saying that, again, the secondhand is coming more standardized, but is there anything, or we talked a little bit, you said about the legislation, which is probably very important, but or maybe based on your research as well, like, are there any other sort of fast track ideas? Because it does feel that it's like a little bit this mindset that we're driven by the easiness, the cheap, and the fast. Is it something that the brands could do a little bit more in terms of the business models changing? Is it the kind of, I don't know, like a workshopping or the education, Muchaneta, who was here with us last time, she was really calling on the education and kind of awareness. But how do you see that kind of speeding up like with knowing that we're kind of starting it from a quite a dark place?
It's a collective pursuit. Obviously, everybody should try to do their best. I see a growing number of brands that are trying to do better, and I see some exceptional examples among small brands that are doing better. The problem is they're really underrepresented. And if we're looking at a brand that has, I don't know, is doing right, but it has 100,000 turnover revenue, you know, per year, as opposed to brands that have trillions, oh, sorry, billions of, okay, millions per year turnover and revenue. These are not equal, you know, these are not created equal, even if the business structure is.
Yeah, they don't have the same as the marketing budget as well. It's different,
Absolutely.
which is not fair.
Not the same marketing budget. They don't have access to the same kind of resources, markets, prices. As having done the startup, I know, you know, the minimum order quantities are just, you know, it's something very difficult to overcome. You cannot compete in terms of prices if you're trying to do the right thing. So regulations are going to help. There is a few regulations that will try to make sure that products that are produced respecting environmental and social conditions are at a more advantageous pricing conditions than those that are not. You know, like France, for example, it's just adopted a bill to put extra €5 on top of the price of every garment that is put out on the market by the likes of Shein. So regulations can definitely help to these small companies that are trying as much as they can to do their best. And consumers supporting smaller brands is also, I can see that, yeah, there's a growing, like the more the person grows and the revenue grows, it is helping to have had the, you know, the background and knowledge about sustainability and worrying about climate change as an adolescent, as a, you know, a young adult. I did read that piece that it's the women of 35 who shop Shein. And I can't say that I'm convinced, because I tried to trace the original piece of research, which is by UBS, which was done by UBS, like a consulting branch. And they are just so secretive about it. I don't understand how this data was collected. And it really goes against, I can't believe that this is so this is very counterintuitive for me. So I'm still taking this with a grain of salt until I find, or like I send them a message actually to like, can I please get access to the data that you use to understand this, because it's not at all what we're seeing in our, you know, in more quality.
Maybe you'll need to do your research and then to find the real yeah.
And I mean, unless they, and I'm pretty sure they didn't obtain this data from Shein itself. Like Shein wouldn't share this data.
Yeah.
I just have a very hard time understanding that. How could they possibly have? Was it a survey? If it was a survey, what kind of survey it was? So surveys are known to have their major issues and biases. So I don't know. I can't say. I don't really think that it's true, but maybe it is. Then I would be really surprised. But yeah.
Yeah, but I guess this, at least in my case, that came as such a big surprise that it was like, can that actually be true? Yeah.
Yeah, for me too.
Sorry, you have a question?
Yes, you kind of partially, answered already, but I just wanted to take the topic a bit further regarding the second-hand market and how the second-hand market is evolving, especially for the ultra fast and fast fashion perspective. And was it that Vestala Collective, about within the past 12 months, I recall that they have been pulling back from accepting any more fast fashion brands. And now, in Finland as well, is that, was it that this week, just within past a couple of days, Emmy, which is also in the kind of second-hand platform, announced that they are not accepting certain their fast fashion brands into their platform because of the high return rates, the lower profitability also in terms of their business and business model perspective. And then interesting that you also mentioned regarding Vinted, and what I've been seeing with Vinted is that there's also quite a lot of the fast fashion items sold there. So what I'm kind of just thinking is that the question what I have, and what is your perspective, or anything coming from the research, is also that having that you have these fast fashion brands and then the second-hand market. So if there are platforms or this kind of secondhand the commercial space, and then if they start rejecting these these kind of fast fashion brands, so what's going to happen with these brands or their products in terms of consumption? That are they being kind of a graveyard in everybody's closets, or are they going into the dump or into the landfill? Or what's the future there? So kind of that would like to kind of pick your brain on this one.
Yeah, thanks, Sari. That's an interesting question. Overall, we know that there has been so much clothes produced that we are covered. We are covered, our children are covered, and the children of our children are covered. For in terms of production of stuff that already exists. We don't have exact numbers. We don't have even we just have a range, but it is clear that too much was produced already. Which means that this stuff, once it has been bought, has to be somewhere. And it's in people's closets. It's in boxes under the bed, and about which we don't speak. It's in our attics. It's in our garages. It's like, it's occupying space. And trying to put stuff on platforms is definitely, it helps with some, getting rid of some things. But if you go and check for items, especially from fast fashion brands, the more notorious ones, let's say, you will find millions and millions of items that are not sold and most likely will never be sold. Because nobody seeks them out. Anybody who is anybody is trying to be higher level anybody. So once you are selling your fast fashion brands, you're likely to seek something that has slightly higher connotation, like in your own hierarchy of brands, a brand that is a bit higher. So whatever stays at the bottom of the pyramid really will stay there. Like you said, the graveyard of clothes. And the fact that they are uploaded, or if they're banned, if they're banned from these bigger platforms, they're always garage sales. If they're always like swapping events. There are other ways of getting rid of your stuff, or just donating them, which is again another very problematic decision. But secondhand market is growing because production continues to grow. So continue to produce a lot, and that is transferred directly, feeds directly the secondhand market.
This is also kind of that obviously there's no answer for this one as well, like you also kind of referring to that as well. It just kind of what worries me really is that you have this kind of well, it's like with the clothing, and the different brands, that you have this kind of different level markets already existing, and you have the demographic groups who are purchasing certain level of certain brands, or just because they want to look in a certain way, or to be acknowledged in a certain way. It just that we're kind of creating, or what I feel with the fast fashion, that we're also creating a kind of creating system even for the textile waste, that you have the textile dump, the waste, and then you have really like waste of all wastes. And is that the fast fashion that nobody is actually willing to pay? And then if there's nobody who's willing to pay for it, so what's going to happen after that? And then
absolutely.
But, thanks anyway. So it's kind of a question without any proper answer.
And I've seen Vestiaire Collectif just did a new campaign, and I just saw it. Maybe it's been there for a bit, but the campaign like swap this for this, in which they're showing first a fast fashion item, and then followed by an item that is pre-loved, and then cost per wear in each case, and I kind of like the fact that they utilize the cost per wear, because it's an important metric that should be incorporated in our decision making as consumers. However, the ultimate goal that we need to achieve with consumption and production, but we're focusing on consumption right now, the ultimate goal is to consume less. It could be still fast fashion. It could be a Zara sweater that you're going to wear your whole life. If it still holds, if it hasn't lost the color,
Why not?
Mm.
It's about consuming, using, having less. It's about learning how to style your things in creative ways. It's about learning how to keep your things longer. But secondhand platforms today, by saying this, like, oh, swap this, you know, I don't know, again, poor Zara, but like, swap this Zara trench with this Burberry trench for 150 euros instead of 100 euros. They're still igniting consumer kind of desire to buy. Oh, I'm going to swap. So I'm just going to change for this. But who prevents you from buying 5 Burberry trenches? They're not telling you to buy fewer things. They're telling you to buy different things. So for me, there's still a problem here, because secondhand has, like, it's not me who said this. There's other researchers have been saying this for a while. Secondhand has attracted this mentality. We have a mentality of buying too much with fast fashion, and that's the problem. The problem is that we have the need, we feel we have the need to buy too much, and we're transferring this very mentality from buying new, cheap, fast fashion to buying cheap, pre-loved or used secondhand, slightly better brands.
Yeah.
But we're still buying a lot. And in terms of our mental health, and does it really decrease, you know, cost per wear if you buy your Burberry trench for 150 euros and then you resell it after 2 seasons because you don't like it anymore?
And then we have the false kind of feeling that we're okay because it's secondhand. So it gives, it's
it is a problem. So and trying to change that cuts deep into the very heart of capitalism and profits and bottom lines. And that's why it's difficult. Like, companies that are telling you not to buy stuff are not going to survive today. They don't have enough support from institutions. They are not accepted in the world of business, because in order to live and make money, you need to grow. You need to grow your sales. You need to grow your markets. You need to expand, scale, whatever. These are the attractive words that we hear. And same goes for secondhand companies as well. So the more they sell, the better. And then telling people to buy less is it's a difficult logic. The sufficiency logic that is difficult to sell.
Yeah. And I'm thinking also about the consumers, because of course I compare it a bit to recycling, that there was of course the phase where we were saying people they should recycle, and now with circular economy we kind of say no, recycling is the last thing we should do. So it's a bit, I guess, it's the same with secondhand, that it was like buy secondhand, that's the best option. Now we tell them, okay, no, that's not. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. But great question, sorry. And Jana, would you like to ask the question that you put on the chat? I can also ask it. Okay, I can ask it. So let's wait for Katia to return.
Sorry, minor emergency. Disaster averted. All good.
No worries. That's life. So Jana is asking here, what kind of emerging innovative trends are we seeing in the secondhand clothing space? Is it just secondhand markets, textile, recycling, or is there something else?
Emerging trends in secondhand markets.
Yeah.
Well, I am not I don't have like a lot of specific expertise. Actually, I'm learning from some Finnish colleagues about that. We have Linda Turunen, who is an expert in secondhand. When I visited Helsinki, she showed me around, and she's a researcher who knows a lot about secondhand trends. But I was thinking that one big trend that is coming is that secondhand is becoming more and more saturated. There's just so much that's moving from, you know, being bought new towards becoming pre-owned. And that, if we follow the very basic logic of microeconomics, as we were taught at universities and high schools, if there is an excessive offer or supply, then prices are going to go lower. So for example, what is it going to mean for the future of luxury? That I'm not sure, you know. I'm not sure that prices will be staying up, because up until now they were still kind of artificially staying up, but imagine like now there is not, I don't know, let's say 10,000 Chanel bags available, but 100,000, and 100,000 people are trying to sell theirs. So they will be dropping prices, right? And it comes for luxury, but it also comes for when it comes to high street brands, fast fashion brands. I think what we're going to see is lowering prices and clothes becoming like, it's already lost its value with the Temu selling shirts for 5 or 2 euros, and Shein, the value of clothes and the cost and price of a garment and its value, they have been this link has deteriorated. We no longer know how much stuff actually costs. We're seeing something that is not linked to neither the price of materials nor the price of labor. We're seeing something that is very wrong and it shouldn't actually be there. And now with secondhand, we're going to see, like, if you bought a shirt from Temu for 2 euros, how much you're going to sell it for secondhand, right? So I think we're going to see some price changes in the secondhand, just because of the overwhelming offer coming in.
Yeah, and in fact, another like business model that I've been now thinking, Jana, regarding your question is the rental and subscription for fashion, but unfortunately these companies, they don't survive. So it's something that I hope to see more in the future, but we need somehow to change the system in order to help them grow. But there is a question by Liu. What is then the way, if there is one, to shift to the growth economy in fashion? So,
well,
big question.
Thank you for asking. So what I try to do with Well-Rounded is I try to apply the growth principles to the brand from the start. The first hiccup that I had was there is no legal structure in Switzerland that allows me to make profits, but use them for solidarity reasons. It has to be SRL or it has to be association. So it's either a for-profit company and then you're full-blown for-profit, or you are a NGO and it's only NGO, and then you can't even pay yourself a salary, for example. So that was the first hiccup. But once I established the company as a for-profit company, I am learning on how to integrate even in the constitution of the company. You know, you can incorporate your values and say, for example, that profits will not be distributed to shareholders until all the commitments are met and more. So it's really up to the company to decide before it goes public. Right? Once it goes public, it also can decide a lot, but then the shareholders are preventing. So there are two different questions. How do you transition towards degrowth for companies that are privately owned and for companies that are public already, where the shareholders that often have no interest whatsoever or even no connection, or sometimes the shareholders don't even know that they're shareholders, like we're speaking about pension funds, right? People have no idea where their actions, like where they're holding shares. They just know that the portfolio is well managed by their pension fund, by someone. Yeah. So for these, I think there would be two different ways of going about it. But I definitely can see how, if there are small startups like mine, what I would really like to implement starting from the next order is to do on demand. So doing pre-orders and then producing based on the number of orders collected to avoid overproduction. That's the strategy. That's kind of the business model that I'd like to employ. I don't know how it's going to work. I hope it will. As opposed to what's usually done when small brands have to order hoping that they would sell it. And then, if they don't, there is all of this excess stock that they don't know what to do with, but they paid for it. So, the sell-through rate today is considered to be good if it's 60%, no, 70%. So 30% are kind of already from the start is considered to be, it's okay if it's not sold. I was a bit shocked because it's a very wasteful thinking. Like, what's going to happen with all this stuff, with all the material that went into it? So producing on demand, producing by pre-orders in smaller batches, smaller quantities, is a great way to go. But there are, of course, many other principles that are linked to degrowth in terms of managing your resources and prioritizing shorter value chains, and what's good for the environment, what's good for social cohesion within your value chain, who your partners are, and so on. I mean, it's another hour conversation here.
We should have another webinar with you. Yeah, because it's related to Jana's question: is your business model like a social enterprise or low profit company? So I guess it's.
I didn't a lot. My business model. I have a business registration, which is SRL, Société à Responsabilité Limitée, company with limited responsibility, which is your general business company. I think that's identical to like what exists across different countries. I know in Germany they have a social enterprise statutes that you could register a company which is a social enterprise, which means you can make money, but then it will be the profits will be distributed in more solidarity, like fashion of solidarity, as opposed to being paid directly to shareholders. So it's slightly different structure, but it depends. Yeah, it will depend on countries adopting new legislations. I know also in the US, for example, the ultimate duty of a company is to its shareholders, which brings with it so many issues in terms of, respecting the environment. Like, if the bottom line is not respected, if shareholders are not happy with their growth of their investments, the company is failing its duty. So that brings up a lot of questions. Our legal systems are quite backwards in terms of
very, very linear. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that in the future, I hope at least, that we'll see new organizational structures and legal structures of companies that we don't think yet. Yeah. And maybe last question, because we're almost in the end of the hour. Iri, would you like to ask?
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, yes.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you very much, Katia, for sharing your amazing story. I really enjoyed it very much. Really well done on your project. So my question is, okay, we are all aware, I mean, we are not all aware, we are, but not all the rest of the people around us, about the future of consumption, which is we need to control overproduction. That is one major issue. But my question is concerning what shall we do about the ecosystem in Ghana, in Kenya, with the Accra market or the Gikomba market in Kenya? What shall we do? Because in Chile as well, we have already ruined, completely destroyed the ecosystem of these countries by dumping, all our unused or garments. So I think the big question is we should also worry about the existing damage that we already caused to these countries. We have completely destroyed their ecosystem. It is going to take probably another century, to repair the damages. So what shall we do? I think we should also contribute. We destroyed their ecosystem, and we should do something to help them, to help the local population to reemerge and to to clean up
our mess.
Our mess.
It's a good point. I completely agree with you. Some organizations like the OR Foundation, Liz Ricketts, they call what's been happening in Ghana waste colonialism. And I think it's a very, very good way of describing it. And it's just one of many manifestations of how the historically, countries that benefited from their colonies are continuing to do that by exporting their waste, by taking resources, mining, resources in countries which barely have any scraps of value of these resources. They're just going for export. So dumping textile waste to countries like Ghana, Kenya, or Chile is one of many manifestations of a really major structural issue, and damages should be compensated for that, but for the textile waste dumping, but for other things as well that
I agree.
European countries and other so-called developed countries in the global north have caused, and the suffering that has caused, and also treating countries that are in vulnerable situations as a source of cheap labor. For me, this is something that
That's horrible.
I just cannot, comprehend, and this when multiple times I've been told, like, yes, but people are still better off in these countries having these jobs than not having these jobs. And what I say to this usually is it's a false dichotomy. We created this dichotomy to justify the status quo of a colony and the metropole, which benefits from this labor. This is a very self-serving dichotomy, but it is a false dichotomy. It's not about having jobs or not having jobs. It's about having this shitty job, excuse me, and having better jobs, and having jobs with social security protection and pensions and education fund for children and childcare, healthcare, and so on. So yeah, this idea that we can exploit people and nature somewhere else. I was just thinking, that would, even Switzerland, there was a factory that produced something and just like dump dirty water with toxic chemicals into the Rhone. I think the whole country would explode. Like, this is so unimaginable here, dumping water with toxic chemicals into the nature, because our nature here is pristine. We don't do this here, but it's okay to do in China. It's okay to do that in Bangladesh. It's okay to do that why is it okay? How is it that people, I think we're all, because my PhD was in ethics, so I read a lot about justice principles of distribution, and for me this per capita distribution is the only one that is fair. If you're born human, you deserve the same share of the pie, no matter where you were born at. But it's the privilege and this colonial relationships that have been there for a while that really created this sense of false entitlement. Why am I, by living in Europe, entitled to more than a person who's living in Thailand or who's living in Chile? I don't know. I'm
just
not.
It's very arrogant, way of thinking, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think arrogance is one of our major fault as well. But thank you very much, Katia. Thank you for sharing and answering.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, Katia, we need another hour, but we have only 1 hour. So I would like to thank you a lot for this hour where I feel that we tapped to so many topics. But it was an amazing overview and really inspiring to hear about your journey. And of course, we wish you luck with the company. And also Rika, she put in the chat the link to your company. So yeah, maybe you'll have new customers from this.
Or just a word of mouth. The more we talk about it, the better. So thank you so much for inviting me. It was a great range of questions and it was a nice discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome to our next webinar, which will be not in 2 weeks, but 3 weeks, in 15th of May with Deloitte. It will be about the regulations, which we also kind of discussed shortly today. So I wish you all a great afternoon, wherever you are, and we'll send you also the recording. And welcome to our next sessions. Thank you, Katia.
Thank you, Mika. Thank you, Katia. Bye.